Hello everyone. Welcome to Contemplate Life. Here, we share real-life stories, heartfelt confessions, and meaningful lessons drawn from everyday experiences. Each story is a quiet reflection on life, love, and human emotions. Now, take a deep breath, relax your mind, and let us begin our journey together.
I used to believe that the most fragile moment in a woman's life was the day she fell in love. I was wrong. It is the day after the wedding. The flowers are still alive in their vases, but already beginning to bend. The dress is hanging quietly in the wardrobe, heavy with silence. And the ring on my finger, still unfamiliar, feels colder than I expected. I am 26 years old, and yesterday I became someone's wife. Today, I am learning how quickly joy can change its shape. No one tells you that happiness can bruise this fast. That it can arrive wrapped in smiles, polite voices, and carefully chosen words that don't sound sharp until later, when you replay them alone. I remember sitting at the kitchen table that morning, still exhausted, still glowing in a way I didn't yet know was fading. I was holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold, listening to the low hum of conversation around me. His parents were there, calm, relaxed, almost tender. Someone laughed. Someone mentioned responsibility. Someone said the word, family, in a way that made it sound like a door quietly closing behind me. Then came the sentence that changed how I would remember my wedding forever. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even said with bad intentions, at least not on the surface. It was offered gently, like advice, like concern. Like something reasonable people say to a young woman who doesn't yet understand how the world works. We think it would be safer if we held on to it for you. For a moment, I didn't understand what they meant. I smiled, because smiling had become my instinct. I nodded, because nodding felt easier than asking questions that might make the room uncomfortable. But something inside me shifted. A quiet tightening in my chest. A sense that I had just crossed an invisible line, without being told there was one. This was not about money. Not really. It was about what happens after the vows, after the photographs, after everyone stops clapping and starts watching. It was about how quickly a woman can go from being celebrated to being managed. I looked at my husband, searching for something in his face. Reassurance, resistance, anything. But he only looked tired. Conflicted, silent. And in that silence, I felt smaller than I had the day before. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even say no. I told myself it was temporary. That love required compromise. That marriage was about trust. But a voice I would later learn to respect whispered softly inside me. This is how it begins. Not with betrayal. Not with violence. But with a polite request, made at the exact moment you are least prepared to refuse. And as I sat there, newly married, surrounded by people who now called me family, I realized something unsettling. Sometimes, the deepest wounds don't come from strangers. They come from the hands that are supposed to protect you, asking you to let go. Just a little. Of yourself. Looking back now, I understand that nothing truly broke that morning. It had already been cracking long before I walked down the aisle. I met my husband when I was 23. He was kind in a quiet way, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke, who avoided conflict not out of weakness but exhaustion. He had grown up learning that peace was something you preserved by not asking for too much. He came from a close family, at least on the surface. His parents had been married for over 30 years. They lived in a modest but carefully kept house in the suburbs. The kind where everything has its place and nothing is ever said too loudly. His mother was the center of that world. Not openly controlling, not harsh. Just always present. Always knowing what was best. Always reminding everyone how much she had sacrificed to keep the family together. His father rarely intervened. He nodded, he agreed, he let things pass. In their marriage, she decided and he adapted. In their family, that was called stability. I came from a very different place. My parents raised me to stand on my own feet. They believed love should never require silence, They had worked hard their entire lives. And when they helped me financially at my wedding, it wasn't about control. It was about trust. By 26, I had a stable job, my own savings, and a clear sense of who I was. I wasn't wealthy, but I wasn't dependent either. The dowry my parents gave wasn't extravagant. It was practical. A safety net. A quiet way of saying, you will never be trapped. After the wedding, my husband and I moved into a small apartment not far from his parents' home. Rent was high. His income was steady but limited. Mine covered what his didn't. On paper, we were equals. But emotionally, things were already uneven. His mother checked in often. At first it felt caring. She asked about meals, schedules, plans for the future. Then gradually, the questions became suggestions. The suggestions became expectations. When we would have children. How we should manage money. What kind of wife I should be now that I was married. There were no children yet. No urgent crisis. But there was a quiet pressure that filled the space between us. As if my body, my time, and my decisions were already being measured against something I had never agreed to. My husband stood between two worlds. He loved me. I never doubted that. But love did not erase the habits he had learned growing up. When tension appeared, he softened it. When his mother spoke, he listened. When I hesitated, he asked me to be patient. Everyone meant well. That was the hardest part. No one shouted. No one threatened. No one openly disrespected me. And yet, I felt myself slowly adjusting. Choosing words more carefully. Explaining myself more often. Questioning instincts that had once felt solid. The request to hold my dowry didn't come out of nowhere. It grew naturally from a system where trust flowed in one direction and authority in another. We were newly married, still learning how to be a couple, still fragile. And in that fragility, old patterns were already positioning themselves quietly around us. Waiting. The first warning signs never arrived like warnings. They came disguised as ordinary moments, the kind you almost feel silly noticing. It started with comparisons. Soft ones, casual ones. His mother would smile and say things like, "When I was your age, I managed the household without help." Or, "Back then, we didn't spend so much on small comforts." She never looked directly at me when she said it. She would say it while folding laundry, while stirring soup, while wiping the counter clean, as if order itself were a virtue I hadn't yet learned. I told myself she didn't mean anything by it. Different generations, different values. That's what everyone says when something feels wrong but not wrong enough to name. Then came the comments about money. One evening, while we were sitting together after dinner, she asked casually, "Have you thought about opening a joint account yet?" I hesitated. "We're talking about it," I said. She nodded slowly. "It's just easier when everything is in one place," she replied. Less confusion. My husband stayed quiet. He stared at his plate like the conversation had nothing to do with him. Later that night, when I asked him what he thought, he shrugged. "She's just trying to help," he said. "You know how she is." That sentence became familiar very quickly. She's just trying to help. She didn't mean it like that. You're taking it too personally. I began to hear those words even before he said them. At family gatherings, she would mention how another relative's wife handled things better. How organized she was. How respectful. How she always consulted her elders before making decisions. "She's very wise for her age," his mother would say, looking at me kindly, as if wisdom were something I simply hadn't earned yet. I smiled. I always smiled. Inside, something tightened each time, but I didn't know how to loosen it without causing a scene. The apartment began to feel smaller. Not physically. Emotionally. Every purchase felt like it needed justification. Every plan felt like it needed approval. Once, I bought a new chair for our living room. Nothing extravagant. Just something comfortable. When his mother visited and saw it, she raised her eyebrows slightly. "Oh," she said, That must have been expensive. It was on sale, I replied quickly, surprised by how defensive I sounded. She nodded. I suppose young people like nice things, she said. That night, my husband asked me how much it cost. I told him. He sighed, not angrily, just tired. We should be more careful, he said. I wanted to ask who we was, but I didn't. Another time, I mentioned visiting my parents for the weekend. His mother's smile stiffened. So soon? She asked. You were just married. You should focus on your new home. New home. As if the place I came from was already something I should be slowly stepping away from. I started choosing silence over explanation. It felt safer. Less exhausting. The comments about the dowry became more frequent, though never direct. Managing finances can be overwhelming for a young couple, his mother said one afternoon. We've seen many marriages fail because of money. She said it with concern. With experience. I nodded. Inside, the voice whispered again. This is not advice. This is preparation. Sometimes, I caught myself rehearsing conversations in my head. Imagining how I would explain my feelings calmly. Imagining how they would understand. But when the moment came, my courage dissolved. The room always felt full. Of expectations. Of unspoken rules. My husband noticed my withdrawal, but he misunderstood it. He thought I was tired. Or stressed from work. You just need time, he said once, pulling me close. Things will settle. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Yet, there were moments when his silence hurt more than their words. When he would glance at me during a conversation, as if asking me to endure just a little longer. As if endurance were a skill I was supposed to master quietly. I began doubting myself. Was I being ungrateful? Too sensitive? Too independent for a family that valued harmony above honesty? No one had raised their voice. No one had insulted me outright. And that made everything harder to name. Because pain that doesn't announce itself feels almost shameful to admit. I told myself this was what marriage looked like. Compromise, adjustment, growth. But deep down, I felt something else growing too. A quiet grief for the woman I had been before. The one who trusted her instincts without apologizing. The first warning signs didn't ask for attention. They only asked for tolerance. And I gave it willingly, believing that love meant learning how to bend without breaking. The moment everything became undeniable didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It arrived quietly, wrapped in paperwork and smiles, the way serious decisions often do. It happened 3 weeks after the wedding. My husband told me his parents wanted us all to have dinner together. Just to talk, he said. The way he avoided my eyes should have warned me. The table was set carefully that night. Too carefully. Candles, plates warmed in the oven. His mother had prepared my favorite dish, something she rarely did. That was the first sign. After we ate, his father cleared his throat. He had a folder in his hands. Thin, but heavy with intention. We've been thinking, his mother began, folding her hands together. About your future. I sat up straighter. So did my husband. She spoke slowly, choosing her words with the precision of someone who had rehearsed them. You're young, still building stability. We worry about unexpected expenses. Emergencies. Things happen. She paused, then continued. We believe it would be wise if the money your parents gave you were kept somewhere secure. The folder slid across the table toward us. Inside were documents. Legal language. Terms that sounded neutral, protective, reasonable. A trust account. Temporary management. Their names listed as custodians. My heart began to pound so loudly I wondered if they could hear it. It's not about control, she said quickly, as if responding to a thought I hadn't voiced. It's about responsibility. I looked at my husband. He looked at the papers. You mentioned this before, I said carefully. But this is different. His mother smiled gently. It's just formalizing what we discussed. Nothing will change. Everything had already changed. She leaned forward. We've seen too many young couples struggle because they think independence means doing everything alone. I noticed how she said young couples, but her eyes stayed on me. This money isn't really yours alone anymore, she added softly. You're married now, it affects everyone. The room felt smaller than ever. My husband finally spoke. Mom, maybe we should take some time. She interrupted him without raising her voice. We are taking time, this is us being careful. Then she turned back to me. You trust us, don't you? The question was gentle. But it was a trap. If I said yes, I agreed. If I said no, I became the problem. I felt heat rise to my face. My parents' faces flashed in my mind. The way they had hugged me after the ceremony. The way my mother whispered, "This is just in case life gets hard." I swallowed. I need time to think, I said. Silence followed. Not surprised silence. Disappointed silence. His father sighed. His mother leaned back in her chair. We didn't expect resistance, she said. That worries me. My husband shifted uncomfortably. It's a lot to process, he said weakly. That was when the third voice entered the room. My sister-in-law. She had arrived late, quietly taking a seat beside her mother. I don't understand, she said, tilting her head. When Mark and I got married, I handed everything over without hesitation. She smiled at me. Marriage means trust. Her words settled heavily in the air. Trust. Again. I suddenly understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a standard I was failing to meet. His mother nodded. Exactly. Some people understand family values more naturally. I felt something inside me crack. Not loudly, but completely. I realized then that no answer I gave would ever be enough. Agreement would only invite more requests. Hesitation would brand me as difficult. The money was no longer the issue. It was about who held power, and who was expected to surrender it gracefully. That night, my husband and I argued for the first time. Really argued. I don't want to fight my parents, he said, running his hands through his hair. They're trying to protect us. From what? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. You're asking me to give up something that represents my independence, I continued. And you won't even say it's unfair. He looked at me then. Truly looked at me. I'm asking you to compromise, he said. The word landed like a verdict. Compromise. Again. I went to bed that night without sleeping. I stared at the ceiling, listening to his breathing beside me. I knew I was standing at a crossroads. One path required silence, patience, and gradual erasure. The other demanded conflict, boundaries, and the risk of being labeled ungrateful. For the first time since the wedding, I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. If I gave in now, what part of myself would I never get back? And if I refused, who would I become in their eyes? The confrontation didn't happen the next day. It happened after several nights of silence, the kind that feels heavier than shouting. We moved around each other carefully. He avoided the subject. I avoided my feelings. Until one evening, I realized I was rehearsing my own disappearance. What it would feel like to become smaller, quieter, easier to manage. That scared me more than any argument ever could. I asked him to talk. Not gently. Not later. Now. We sat at the dining table, the same one where the papers had been slid toward me days earlier. I didn't sit beside him. I sat across from him. I need to know where you stand, I said. He rubbed his face, already exhausted. I told you, I want peace. No, I replied, you want quiet, that's not the same thing. He looked up sharply. I need to know, I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. If you believe that money belongs to me or to your family. He hesitated. That hesitation was louder than any answer. It's complicated, he said finally. That was when something in me hardened. It's not, I said. It's only complicated when someone benefits from the confusion. His jaw tightened. You're being unfair. I'm being clear, I replied. The doorbell rang. I already knew who it was. His parents walked in without waiting for an invitation, as if the conversation belonged to them too. His mother's eyes went immediately to my face. She could sense it. The shift. "We should talk," she said calmly. "Yes," I replied, "we should." No one sat down at first. We stood in the living room like opposing sides. Furniture suddenly irrelevant. "You've been distant," his mother began. "I'm worried about what that means for your marriage." I nodded slowly. "I've been thinking," I said, "about what marriage means to all of you." She smiled politely. "Marriage means unity." "No," I said, "marriage means consent." The word landed heavily. She blinked. "That's a strong word." "So is control," I replied. My husband stepped in. "Please don't turn this into a fight." I looked at him. "This is already a fight. You just decided I was the only one allowed to bleed quietly." His father cleared his throat. "We are only asking for cooperation." "You are asking for surrender," I said. His mother's tone sharpened slightly. "You're exaggerating." "Then explain why my parents' gift requires your supervision," I said. "Explain why trust only works in one direction." Silence followed. Finally, she spoke. "In our family," she said, "wives don't keep secrets." I laughed. A short, hollow sound. "This isn't a secret," I said, "it's a boundary." She crossed her arms. "That sounds very individualistic." "Yes," I replied, "it is." My husband looked torn. "You're putting me in an impossible position," he said. "No," I answered quietly, "I'm showing you the position you've already chosen." His mother's voice rose for the first time. "So this is about pride?" "No," I said, "it's about dignity." The room felt electric. Every sentence carried weight now. No polite cushioning left. "If you don't agree," she said, "you're telling us you don't trust this family." I met her gaze without blinking. "I trust myself," I said. That was the moment everything shattered. "You're selfish," she snapped. "And you're entitled," I replied. My husband slammed his hand against the table. "Enough." He was shaking. "I can't choose between you and my parents," he said. I looked at him carefully. Then I said the words that had been forming in my chest for days. "You already did." The truth settled over the room like dust after a collapse. His father looked away. His mother straightened her posture. "If this is how you see us," she said coldly, "then maybe you're not ready for marriage." I nodded. "Maybe I'm not ready for this marriage." My husband's face went pale. "You don't mean that." "I do," I said. I walked into the bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. My hands didn't shake. My heart did. "You're leaving?" he asked. "I'm choosing myself," I replied. His mother scoffed. "So dramatic." "No," I said softly, "this is survival." I packed only essentials. Documents, clothes. The ring stayed on the nightstand. At the door, my husband finally broke. "Please," he whispered, "don't do this." I looked at the man I had married. The man who loved me, but not enough to protect me. "I already did this," I said. The moment I was asked to disappear politely. I walked out. The marriage didn't end that night legally. But it ended emotionally, completely, irrevocably. Some decisions don't need paperwork to be final. As the door closed behind me, I felt something unexpected. Grief. Yes. Fear. Absolutely. But also relief. Because for the first time since the wedding, the silence was mine. Leaving didn't feel brave. It felt hollow. The night I walked out, the city looked unfamiliar, even though I had lived in it for years. Streetlights blurred through the windshield as I drove without a clear destination. Only a direction away. I stayed with a friend at first. Her guest room was small, tidy, and kind in the way temporary places often are. She didn't ask many questions. She let silence do the work. The first weeks were the hardest. Not because of regret, but because of absence. I woke up reaching for a phone that didn't buzz anymore. I caught myself mentally rehearsing explanations for people who weren't there. My body was free, but my mind still lived in the marriage. Loneliness has a sound. It hums quietly when everything else is still. There were practical consequences too. Lawyers, conversations that drained more than they resolved. The marriage ended officially months later, with paperwork that felt colder than the night I left. The dowry never changed hands. That fact mattered less than I thought it would. What mattered was learning how to exist again without defending my choices. I rented a small apartment on my own. Nothing special. Bare floors, white walls. But every object inside it was placed by me. The first night there, I sat on the floor and cried. Not because I missed him, but because I didn't recognize myself anymore. Healing wasn't dramatic. It didn't arrive as clarity or strength. It arrived as routine. Grocery shopping alone. Cooking meals for one. Paying bills without explaining them to anyone. At first, those things felt heavy. Then they began to feel grounding. Time passed unevenly. Some days moved quickly. Others dragged, thick with memories that resurfaced without warning. I would hear a phrase that sounded like his mother's voice. Or see a couple holding hands in public and feel something tighten briefly in my chest. But the pain was different now. It no longer asked me to change. I started therapy. Not because I felt broken, but because I wanted to understand why I had stayed silent for so long. I learned words I hadn't had before. Enmeshment. Conditioned compliance. Emotional labor. They didn't excuse anyone. They explained me. Months went by. The seasons changed. I cut my hair shorter. Not as a statement. Just because it felt lighter. I began taking walks in the evenings, listening to podcasts instead of my own thoughts. I started sleeping through the night. Peace didn't feel like happiness at first. It felt like quiet neutrality. Like standing still after being pushed for too long. One afternoon, I realized something small but important. I had gone an entire day without replaying the confrontation in my head. The memory was still there. It just didn't demand my attention anymore. I ran into my ex-husband once, accidentally, at a cafe. We exchanged polite words. He looked older, tired. He asked if I was doing well. I said yes. It wasn't a performance. Later, I learned that his family blamed me for the collapse. That I had been too rigid. Too modern. Too unwilling to compromise. Those words used to haunt me. Now, they simply described someone else's disappointment. I stopped needing their understanding. Living alone taught me something I hadn't expected. That peace isn't loud. It doesn't prove itself. It exists in not flinching when your phone rings. In not rehearsing explanations before speaking. In knowing that your no will not be punished. I became gentler with myself. More attentive. There were still hard days. Moments when I questioned everything. But even doubt felt different now. It belonged to me. The woman I was before the marriage didn't come back exactly as she had been. She returned quieter. More discerning. I no longer confused endurance with love. Or silence with maturity. The upheaval took something from me. But it also returned something essential. My voice. And in the slow rebuilding of my life, I learned that survival doesn't always look like triumph. Sometimes, it looks like choosing a smaller, quieter happiness. And finally allowing yourself to live inside it. The call came on an ordinary afternoon. That was how life seemed to deliver turning points once I had learned to live quietly again. No warning, no drama, just a phone vibrating on the table while I was folding laundry. It was my ex-husband's number. For a moment, I considered letting it ring. Not out of fear. Out of choice. Then I answered. His voice sounded thinner than I remembered. Careful, hesitant. As if he wasn't sure he was allowed to take up space in my life anymore. My mother is sick, he said. He didn't say how sick. He didn't need to. Cancer has a way of changing the weight of a sentence. I listened without interrupting. He told me about hospital corridors and test results and how quickly authority dissolves when the body begins to fail. She asked about you, he added quietly. That surprised me more than the illness itself. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was angry, but because I needed to notice what I felt. There was no satisfaction, no sense of justice, only a dull ache where old resentment used to live. A week later, I went to see her. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and waiting. She looked smaller in the bed. Not fragile, just reduced. She smiled when she saw me. A real smile. One without calculation. I didn't think you would come, she said. I wasn't sure either, I replied honestly. We sat in silence for a while. The kind that no longer needed managing. Then she spoke. I thought I was protecting my son, she said. I didn't realize how much I was suffocating him. I nodded. Not in agreement. In recognition. And you, she continued, her voice weaker now. I thought you were a threat because you didn't need us. There it was. The buried truth, finally named. I felt something loosen in my chest. I never wanted to take anything from you, I said gently. I only wanted to keep myself. She looked at me for a long moment. Then tears filled her eyes. I didn't know how to let go, she whispered. For the first time, I saw her clearly. Not as my adversary. Not as my judge. But as a woman who had mistaken control for care for most of her life. I didn't forgive her in that moment. Not fully. But I understood her. Understanding didn't erase what happened. It simply released me from carrying it forward. When I left the hospital, I felt lighter. Not because anything had been resolved, but because I no longer needed resolution. Weeks later, she passed away. There was no dramatic message. No final words meant only for me. Just an ending. At the funeral, I stood quietly at the back. I wasn't part of the family anymore. And I didn't need to be. My ex-husband found me afterward. He looked at me with something new in his eyes. Regret. But also acceptance. She said she was wrong. He told me. About you. I nodded. I know, I said. That was enough. We didn't speak again after that. There was nothing left to repair or reclaim. Walking away from the cemetery, I realized something profound. Closure doesn't always come from apology. Sometimes it comes from clarity. I had spent so long trying to be understood. Now, I understood myself. And that was the turning point. Not reconciliation. Not vindication. Release. I went home that evening and opened my windows. Let fresh air move through rooms that no longer carried old echoes. The story didn't end with triumph. It ended with space. Space to breathe. Space to remember without pain. Space to let go without bitterness. And in that space, I finally learned what peace actually feels like. For a long time, I thought forgiveness was something dramatic. A moment, a decision, a clear line drawn between before and after. But that isn't how it happened for me. Forgiveness came quietly, without ceremony, on an afternoon that looked like any other. I was washing dishes, the window was open, the light was soft. And I realized that I wasn't carrying them with me anymore. Not his mother. Not my ex-husband. Not the conversations that once replayed endlessly in my mind. They had become part of my past, not my present. That was when I understood something important. Forgiveness isn't always about release for the other person. Sometimes, it's simply the moment you decide to stop reopening a wound that has already taught you everything it could. I didn't forgive because they deserved it. I forgave because I was tired of living in reaction to what had already ended. Peace didn't arrive as joy. It arrived as steadiness. As waking up without heaviness in my chest. As making choices without explaining them to imaginary critics. As trusting my instincts again. Slowly, carefully, like learning a language I once spoke fluently and had forgotten. There are still days when memory surprises me. A phrase, a scent, a familiar tone of voice in a stranger. But the memories no longer pull me backward. They stand still now, like photographs. I can look at them without stepping inside. If I've learned anything from this story, It's that love without autonomy becomes obligation. And obligation, no matter how politely it's presented, eventually asks you to disappear. Walking away didn't make me stronger overnight. But staying would have made me smaller over time. And sometimes, that's the only clarity we need. I don't regret loving him. I don't regret trying. I don't even regret the pain. Because it taught me the exact shape of my boundaries. What I regret is how long I believed silence was maturity. If you're listening to this and recognizing pieces of yourself, I want you to know something. You are not difficult for wanting to be whole. You are not selfish for protecting what keeps you grounded. And you are not ungrateful for choosing peace over approval. Life doesn't always reward the brave with applause. Sometimes, it rewards them with quiet mornings and honest sleep. And that is enough. If this story resonated with you, if it felt like a mirror rather than a lesson, I hope you'll stay with me. There are more reflections like this here, on Contemplate Life, for anyone learning how to live gently after something breaks. Before we part, I want to leave you with a question. Not one that needs an answer right away. Just one to sit with. What are you holding on to? Not because it brings you peace, but because letting go feels unfamiliar? Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. And until next time, goodbye.